What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday, February 23rd's edition of Storytime with Julian. I am your host and griot, Julian, and it is just about story time. Thank you so much for making the time and coming out. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. You could be anywhere in the world tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and that means a lot to me. First things first, I, Papa, but no, want to go ahead and make sure for those of you who don't know, today is the birthday of W.E.B. Du Bois, and that's Du Bois. Don't say Dubois, it's Du Bois. And W.E.B. Du Bois is, of course, a giant in African American history. He is an icon of Black excellence. He is the father of modern African American children's lit. He is the publisher of the first Black children's lit magazine called The Brownies Book. He is also, of course, the author of Souls of Black Folks, as well as the novel "The Quest for the Quest of the Silver Fleece," which is about it's effectively a romance novel in the antebellum South, set against the backdrop of the cotton industry and plantation life. It's really quite exceptional, and I honestly didn't know that it existed until today. And that's that's a miss on my part, but something that I was excited to learn. We always associate W.E.B. Du Bois with the talented tenth. We associate him with the soul of Black folks. We associate him with sort of the birth of sociology and the numerous incredible essays that he wrote. Who knew he had a quasi romance novel in him? Not me. But I learned today. I'm gonna learn today. Actually, I don't know why I did that in Bernie Mac's voice. That's Kevin Hart's riff, but I don't like Kevin Hart as much as I like Bernie Mac, and also I don't do as good a Kevin Hart as I do a Bernie Mac. So that's why that happened. Incidentally, just completely off topic, my mom is now a huge fan of the Bernie Mac show. I told her two Bernie Mac jokes, and she doubled over in laughter and said, "Oh, I have to see him. I have to see who he is." And so I put on an episode of the Bernie Mac show, and she is all over it. So yeah. Now, going into before we go into tonight's read, which let me go ahead and hold this up, we are going to be reading tonight from Crystal E. Wilkinson's Blackberries, Blackberries. Now, this is an award-winning collection of short stories. You'll find out more about Crystal E. Wilkinson if you go on the Storytime with Julian page. You'll be able to find a little bit of a bio or a write-up that was done by Storytime with Julian staff. Actually, Angel Monique wrote that bio. You'll find a little bit of information about her, some of what informs and influences her writing. One of the things that I find interesting and intriguing about Ms. Wilkinson is that she is straight up country and owns every bit of it, owns every bit of her countryness. And in a time when that is often shied away from, where people are often embarrassed to claim their countryness, she celebrates it, she revels in it. And it really is the backdrop and some might argue the backbone of much of her writing. So it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how that informs tonight's read. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. You see me kind of messing with the lights because I'm not a fan of how everything is kind of turning out. It's kind of bothering me a little bit. The lighting's a little off. I'm trying a new angle, and in so doing, I've got to adjust the lights to accommodate for it. It's hard when you ain't got no real producer, when you're trying to do all this ish by yourself. Thank you so much. I see Kitty Foxy is inviting somebody in to play with us tonight. Thank you for doing that, Kitty Foxy. I would love it if right now, all of you who enjoy what we do here at Storytime with Julian, I would love it if you would go ahead and make an invitation yourselves. Get somebody that you know would love and appreciate this and invite them in. Have them come in and enjoy what you're about to enjoy. And help spread the word also on social media, on whatever platforms that you utilize. Let people know what we're doing over here. Direct them to YouTube, direct them to Facebook, whatever's going to be the man. I'm still really struggling with these lights right now. They were fine before in the pre-read, and for some reason, like the camera shutter changed, and it's driving me up a wall. But I'm not going to let it be something that drives y'all up a wall. I'm just going to be a little bit darker tonight. It is what it is. But yeah, please go ahead and do that. Let's see who we've got. I see we've got Angel. I see Angela Rains is here. I see Marie is here with us over on YouTube, which is what I love to see. I love seeing everybody over on the YouTubes. Please, please, please make a point to go there because that's where we really want to blow things up. Now, before we get into tonight's read, I do want to remind everybody about what we're doing. That this is really probably the most ambitious thing that Storytime has taken up, and this is our first annual spring book drive. Now, the purpose of the book drive is to put 100 Black books in the hands of 100 Black kids. Now, if you want to be a part of this book drive, it's real easy to do. All you need to do is, you know what, this isn't the right graphic for, but that's okay. All you need to do is go onto the Storytime with Julian page. You will see it pinned up. It is the pinned post on the page. Follow that bit.ly link that's there, or use your phone, and you can use the QR code to access that. Follow that bit.ly link and fill out a form. It's an easy to navigate form that will nominate your child to receive one of our books. In addition, if you want to make a donation, well, you can do that easily through your mobile device. Just go ahead and go to Cash App or Venmo. On Cash App, you're going to do $ Harriet's Bookshop. On Venmo, it's @ Harriet's Bookshop. Go ahead and follow the spelling that's in the graphic there. And when you do, make sure that you use the hashtag STWJ Spring. That way, the good folks over at Harriet's know that you intend for that amount that you send to be utilized to help Black kids get Black books. We have been fortunate to have a number of really solid donations. We are just about at, if not over, halfway to our goal, which is very exciting. And we still have some slots left. I still think there are about 20, maybe 30 slots left for kids who need books. So if you want to nominate a child, please make sure that you get that done soon. Once we have to close it, we have to close it. We won't be able to take on any more until we're sure that we can cover everybody that's on the list, that every child that's on the list gets one book. And then after that, if we still have time before the 24th, we'll open that list back up and we'll accept more donations and keep it going. But 100 Black books in the hands of 100 Black kids is our goal. So thank you so much for everybody who has donated so far. You really don't know how much it means to me and how much it's going to mean to these kids. But I tell you, when you'll find out on Thursday's pre-read, we're going to have the folks from Engage Detroit, from Acta Non Verba, and from Harriet's Bookshop on the show to talk about what it is that they do. You've seen us talk about Harriet's a lot. Pretty much anytime that we post a link to pick up a book, it's for Harriet's. And this is not anything that they've done as a paid promotion. We just like what they stood for. We like the idea of their bookshop. We like the mission of their bookshop. They worked with us on wordplay. And so it was just really exciting to us to, be able to support a Black bookshop that we believed in. We always say buy local, support your local Black bookstore. But, we kept putting their name up. And then when it was time to do this book drive, I said, you know what, let's reach out to Harriet's and see if maybe they would be cool with it. And they were like, they jumped at the chance. They jumped at the chance to be a part. And that was exciting for me. I see, let's see. I see some links and some questions. Welcome, Cleopatra Jones. I love your name. I think it's phenomenal that you're here. I hope that Yolanda joins us. If you do join us, Yolanda, make sure that you pop in and say hi. I'm looking to see all of these other comments just to see what's going on. Reese Young, I hope that I do see Reese Young is here. Good. I'm glad that you joined. And just in case that you guys didn't catch the question, Reese was asking, what's the age range for the kids? And it's 1 through 17. So basically, as long as they kids and they Black, they on the list. We've got, and we have a selection of books curated by the staff of Storytime with Julian that was explicitly done by Kiwana, who curated a list of titles for each age group. So you will almost certainly find something that's appropriate for your young one there. All right, so I think we've covered all of that. I'm ready to get into some stories. Y'all ready to get into some stories? Let's get into some stories. So again, tonight's book is Crystal E. Wilkinson's Blackberries. And this is an award-winning book. This was, I believe, originally published in, hold on, I want to go back and find the information. This text is copyright 2000. I think these stories were originally published much earlier than that. You can go to the Storytime with Julian page on Facebook. You'll find a lot more information about Ms. Wilkinson. You'll see some other titles that she has published. You'll see a litany of awards that she's won. And you'll see the cover of this book, which I'm going to hold up. So if you are inclined to buy it, you know what I'm going to say. Support your local Black bookstore, or we'll post a link up closer to the end of the show. The first story that we're going to read tonight is Hushed. And again, I'm sorry, before I begin, I didn't get a chance to run the intro tonight. So, our disclaimer is, as always, these are cold reads. I have not read this story before. I glance through, sometimes the stories are perused by staff when we have the opportunity to cross check. But in this particular instance, I haven't had a chance to read these stories. So, there may be sensitive subject matter, things that could trigger you. Should you find yourself in an emotionally vulnerable place, I encourage you to disengage from the story. Find your peace, find your center, come back later, ask a friend, when or if it's safe to come back to read. Your health and well-being, your soundness of soul is far more important than just being consistent on the program. So I just want to make sure that you know that. And this story is called Hushed. He is her secret keeper. At night, they sneak from different directions. They meet at the creek that snakes across the bottom of the fields, a natural divide of the earth. They are kin, distant cousins. She thinks he is beautiful, especially when the moon dances light onto the curls of his hair, and she imagines she sees his reflection smiling back. His skin is silk and, like hers, the lightest of browns, like fine oak. His eyes, shiny, the color of buckeyes. Everyone thinks he is ignorant, that he is dumb, but he is not. Our brother and sister laugh at him. They think it's funny that he is mute, funny that only whispered sounds come out when he speaks. In many ways, Naoma is mute too, the quiet one, the deceitful one, Mama says. Sneaky, Mama says when she's mad at her. Spiteful, Mama says to Noma when she finds a large piece gouged from the hot milk cake. Noma has always courted the shadows to avoid being slapped in the face or lashed with a belt. She has never done any more or any less than the rest of us, yet she has always been the one that Mama singles out. Tana, our sister, has stolen as many pieces of chess pie or lemon cake as Noma has. We all, we have all shirked our dish duty. Alfonso, our brother, has broken his share of vases and teacups. And although Noma is neither the eldest nor the youngest, Mama always shouts her name when the clothes fall from the line into the dirt, when the toilet overflows, when she finds the broken glass, when the kitchen has not been swept, when she needs her sassafras tea. Pap sees but doesn't see. He keeps his head turned. He walks away. In town, over cups of coffee and across clotheslines, the rumor floats through the jaws of old women that Pap is not Noma's real father. I have always been too afraid to ask, too afraid to know. But every time Mama hits her or twists her mouth to call Naoma's name, every time Pap looks the other way, I know she must be somebody else's child. Naoma suffers in silence as I imagine Clifton suffers in his. Every time I shut my eyes, I see brothers, sisters, and cousins encircling Clifton and taunting him, running behind him where they know he cannot see that they are what they are saying. I can see in his eyes he is tortured. Naoma stands with her eyes toward the ground when the laughing begins. But in the night, she assures Clifton that he is no laughing matter. They have come to know each other's ways. Between them, silence is virtuous. In our small house on Jones Knob, Naoma thinks everybody is asleep. She leans over to test our baby sister. While she is snoring, she blows air into her face. It takes her breath away like a baby or puppy. She gasps for air and in her slumber tries to brush Naoma from her cheeks. She looks like an angel. Her face is round like the moon, the color of burnt bread. It is only at night when she is asleep that I truly love her. Naoma stands over her a while. I like our sister this way. Sleep makes her more like Naoma. In the day she wears our mother's mouth and eyes. Naoma fights the urge to kiss her on the lips and tiptoes from the bedroom. She prepares a picnic basket for Clifton. Inside a bucket, lined with a clean tea towel, she places 2 cold ham biscuits, some leftover potato cakes, a Granny Smith apple, a baby jar full of sorghum molasses, and a mason jar of sweet tea. In the darkness of the kitchen, she moves quietly like some nocturnal cat, moving only in shadows and moonlight. She smooths her dress and places a quilt roll under her arm. She has dressed in red. Clifton is partial to brilliant colors. He carries Naoma's purple scarf in the pocket of his jeans so that she is always with him. Mama says red is the preference of old whores and fast-tailed girls. Naoma has scented her neck bone with Mama's dusting powder. Clifton knows to meet her at midnight. All the cousins were helping out in the field today. Pap, sensing Naoma had some way with Clifton, asked her to take him to the barn and help put up the cows. Everyone laughed, including Pap. Inside the barn, I saw Naoma kiss Clifton's lips. She told him to meet her at 12. He watched her lips move, but she pulled a tobacco stick from the stalls and wrote a big 12 in the dirt to make sure. Naoma came home to supper with a too big smile on her face. Mama, as usual, has her own suspicions, but she would never guess Clifton in anybody's million years. Mama says she can see the whore coming out in Naoma, can see it in her eyes and in the spread of her hips. Hot in the ass, she says when Naoma walks by. After supper, I watched Naoma looking at herself in the looking glass. She walked back and forth in front of it, staring at herself from different angles. I tried hard to find some gleam in the whorishness Mama swears she sees. I found nothing whorish, but nothing that says 16 either. Outside, the night air is barely cool. A shiver tingles through my bones, somewhere between fear and anticipation. In the bright moonlight, a huge shadow stretches alongside Naoma as I follow in the bushes. It is a bit frightening at first, but as I reach the curve in the dirt road, I am comforted by my blacker self spread out across the ground. Naoma slows her gait and looks up at the night sky. Above us, in an endless sheet of blue-black velvet, sprinkled with a million stars. I think we must be the only girls in Kentucky partaking of this wonder. As we near the creek, I hear frogs croaking and katydids scatting. I hear Naoma's feet crunching the gravel. She arrives before Clifton and spreads the quilt across the rocks as close to the creek as she can get. The sound of water gurgling lulls me. Naoma reaches her hand out and lets the water run through her fingers and down her salty arm. I hear Clifton long before I see him. I hear his feet crunching through the brush, then gravel giving way under his feet. When Naoma stands to greet him, he bears on her a full, open-mouthed kiss. Above his lip is the beginning of a mustache. Clifton is 21, yet I think of him as being much younger. His face is fresh and full of sweetness, like that of a small boy. His left arm is wrapped behind his back, sheltering a surprise. When he brings forth his open palm, I see it as red and white candies wrapped in clear cellophane. As Naoma unloosens one and from its package and pops it into her mouth, Clifton removes the tea towel from the bucket. He brings the ham biscuit up to his nose, smells, then bites. Of course he doesn't speak, but I see in his expression the pleasure that good food brings. Clifton and Naoma lie on their backs, sandwiched between their own quilt and the one that blankets the sky. They eat, rising up on their sides to sip the tea. They embrace, and Naoma kisses each of Clifton's deaf ears and the soft skin along the sleek line of his neck. He reaches his hand along her thigh, under the skirt of her dress. He fingers the fabric. A tingle vibrates, chills my bones. I shiver and know that he must hear it somewhere from the inside out. Clifton and Naoma lie face to face in the dark. We are all quiet, like a prayer. Our hushed voices pierce the night air. And thus endeth the story. So you just heard Hushed, which is a part of this collection, Blackberries. And I'm going to take a minute, since we've got a couple of seconds in between the story, and just kind of see what y'all think. I see that Homie Lou is here, and Reese Young, I thank you for that encouragement. I see you said, go on, Griot. Appreciate that. Ebony Martin, good to see you here. Angela Lee Rains, good to see you here. Reese is definitely familiar with that sassafras tea. I see you identify as a Geechee boy. Mika Poppins says hot in the ass is definitely a southern term of the elders. And Latricia Ransom comes with yes, that and womanish or womlish or You know what? It could be either one. I've definitely heard womanish, and I wouldn't put womanish past nobody. Angela Lee Raines like that line, "We are all quiet like a prayer." And that one spoke to me too. What was that one line? I held up my finger. "I am comforted by my blacker self spread along the ground." Man, what a way to talk about your shadow. That was dope. That I think was probably my favorite line in that reading. I was comforted by the blacker self, by my blacker self. Hold on, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. As I reach the curve in the dirt road, I am comforted by my blacker self spread out across the ground. That was nice. That one was nice. I like that line a lot. So we're going to keep it moving. Definitely toward the end of the show, we'll come back to any additional comments. But next up, we are going to read Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind. Sorry, I got to loosen my jaw a little bit. Get the instrument ready. I am sitting here on vacation in my own damn house on a Saturday afternoon trying to have peace of mind. All three of my boys gone to summer camp. No man. Even the cat knows to leave me alone. I fix me a glass of lemonade, crack up laughing because I done caught myself waiting for somebody to say, "Mama, can I have some?" And ain't nobody here to do that. About time I pop me some extra butter microwave popcorn, lay down across my made up bed in my clean bedroom, quiet as a mouse, and open up my very own copy of A.J. Verdel's The Good Negress. The phone rings. Peaches is on the other end of the line talking about, "Who should I take to PG and Frida's party?" And I'm saying, "Girl, please," because I can't even believe she's got the nerve to go, because she knows and I know she's been sleeping with PG behind Frida's back. And I guess that's what Frida gets for bragging about how good PG is up under some covers. Why shouldn't I go? Frida invited me. Girl, that is trifling. And I can't even believe I wouldn't even have the nerve. Well, that's what PG gets. I waited all night for that motherfucker. He said he was going to sneak away last night, and then he never did come. I wasted all that candlelight dinner and perfume and shit, and he didn't even show. Peaches, now you know better. Why are you trying to play a game like he would really choose his part-time piece of ass over his full-time wife? Well, he don't seem to have no problem begging for this ass when he's over here. And I have to tell you, I be begging back, girl, that man can give. Peaches, please. I don't even want to be that deep in your business. Well, I think I'm going to take Fred with me to the party so PG can see that I ain't sprung over him for real. Hold on a minute. I click over and I'm glad somebody's calling me so that I can get away from this trifling conversation. Peaches is trifling, even if she has been my best friend since college. "Mama, make Danny and them stop fighting before the camp people sends us home." Eric Jr. sounds tore up with his brothers. I talk to my baby like Peaches ain't on the other line. I'm hoping she hangs up. Put Danny on the phone. "Mama, I wasn't even doing nothing. See, dang, this boy tried to take one of my pancakes, and you know how much I like pancakes, right? And then he tried to blame it on Duwan, and he didn't know that Duwan was my brother, right? So Duwan got on one side, and I got on the other side, right? And we both hit him in the shoulders and gave him a Charlie horse, and then he wants to be running and telling like some old punk. Boy, if you and Duwan don't behave yourselves, I'm beating y'all's asses, and you're going to be on punishment for the whole damn summer." And I look up to God praying that I don't have to enforce that one, because it would drive me crazy if them boys are in my house tearing up shit all summer long. "I love you. Now put Duane on the phone." "Yes, ma'am." "Mama, we wasn't even doing nothing." "Oh, straight up punk." "Boy, if you and Danny don't behave, you gonna be on punishment for the whole summer, and y'all gonna get y'all's asses whipped. Do you hear me, boy?" "Yes, ma'am." Dang, man, I told you. I hear him put his hand over the phone and tell his brother, "She gonna make us stay all summer." Dang. "Duane." "Yes, ma'am." "Y'all better behave yourselves. I love you. Now put Eric Jr. back on the phone." "I love you too, Mama. Bye." "Hello?" I had it completely backwards. "Eric Jr., since you the oldest, please try to keep your brothers in line for Mama. Okay? I'll pick y'all up next Sunday. You call me back if they keep cutting up here. Love you. Bye." "Okay, Mama. Bye." Eric Jr. don't sound pleased, but he knows I mean what I said. The phone beeps again before I can hang up. "Hello, Peaches." Hello, Sharon. It's me, Linda. I'm standing at your desk. I hate to bother you at home while you're on vacation and on a weekend too, but I'm working a little late while today and can't find a file. I thought it might be on your desk somewhere. I just thought I would call you before we went rummaging through your desk to find it. Dear Lord, I'm thinking to myself, they can't find a pimple on their ass when I'm not there, even with directions. And I don't know why she's saying we when she knows ain't nobody crazy enough to work on a Saturday when they don't have to, except her stupid, bouffant haired, nose up Mr. Moore's crack ass. Hello? Hello? Sharon, are you there? I'm wishing I wasn't, but I put my work voice on because she is my supervisor. Yes, Linda, I say, gritting my teeth. That's fine, no problem. Which file is it that you're looking for? The Chancery file, she says. The Chancery file is in my outbox on the right-hand side of my computer. Didn't you get my memo telling you where everything was before I left? I'm thinking she just wants to be rummaging through my desk while I'm gone to see what she can find, but at this very moment, I really don't give a damn. Oh, yes, I see it here. Sorry. I'm really sorry that I had to bother you during your vacation. Having a good time? Yes, I sure am, I said, chuckling, being as fake as anything. I'll see you next week. Uh-huh. Okay. You have a good weekend too. Bye. I lift my glass of lemonade and see that all my ice has melted and settle back into my book. I read a few pages and start to drift off. No phone, no kids, no peaches, no job. Then the damn phone starts to ring again. Hey, baby, it's me, Eric. The boys told me they were going to camp this week. I just thought that you might be lonely and want to come catch a movie or something. Maybe we could go over to PG and Frida's. I heard they having a party. What you think? What do I think, Eric? I think that we've been divorced for 2 years and I'm enjoying it that way. And that every time the boys go off to camp or somewhere and you find out about it, you start worrying about who I'm spending my free time with. And that it's none of your fucking business. And send your goddamn child support, which is late, by the way, before I haul your ass back to court and stop trying to come up with a way to get in my draws because it is not, I repeat, not going to happen. That's what the fuck I think. I hang up on that motherfucker. And just as soon as I do, I'll be damned if the phone does not ring again. Look, motherfucker, I told you. Girl, what in the world is wrong with you? It's Peaches again. Why you leave me hanging? I just went on and hung up and did my nails. I got this new polish, it's purple. PG thinks it's sexy and Fred likes it too, so I can't lose. I thought you were my best friend. Now my problem is going to be what if Fred's busy or I can't get to him? Now, my problem is going to be, what if Fred's busy or I can't get him to go? Then PG's going to think I'm home by myself waiting on him, and I know he's going to be home fucking Frida tonight after the party because that's how shit happens. And I want him to be thinking about me when he does it. And if he is going to be with his wife, then I'm going to be getting me some too with Fred or some goddamn body. I lay the phone on the bed and place a pillow over it and let her talk. Peaches faintly sounds like a mouse squeaking and squealing her heart out. I pick up my book and flip over the back. A.J. Verdell's looking back at me, strength in her face, her dreads hanging down. I flip back to my page and start reading. I hear Peaches squeaking, and I'm thinking Peaches needs to quit thinking about that piece of a man and be looking for peace of mind. I know I am. And thus endeth the story. That story was funny. I enjoyed that. Now, that one reminded me a lot of that story reminded me a lot of J. California Cooper. It also reminded me of oh my gosh, I think it was Nafisa Thompson Spires has a story that we loved. What was her name? Marianne, was it? Y'all remember the one about old girl who was at the DMV and whose best friend was just tired. That story, it kind of reminds me of that one. Caught me off guard with the kids at camp. I thought for sure that Eric was the baby who was desperate because his older siblings were the ones doing the fighting. It never occurred to me that the oldest boy would be calling because the younger siblings were fighting. Because I would have figured being the oldest, you would have just knocked him upside the head. But anyway, that was Peace of Mind by Crystal E. Wilkinson. And I loved that one. I hope y'all did too. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's take a look at some of the comments and see what y'all said. I'm going to run it back. Um, Mika said, "Oops, Peaches, man, Peaches is so messy. Listen, she fucking the man gonna go to what I presume is an anniversary party and front the man's wife and then try to make the man jealous with some other cat. Peaches is, Kitty Foxy points out, hot in the ass. So for those of you who are not familiar with the term, you now have a reference for hot in the ass. You got a chance to hear it in a sentence, and now you get to see it in action. Peaches is hot in the ass. You know what, Angel? You know what? I'm not, y'all, you and Latricia, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Y'all just, but that line, I be begging to, and that's what she gets for telling everybody PG was good under some covers. Alrighty then. I guess that's what free to get. I guess that's what free to get. Eric got red for absolute filth. For absolute filth. Eric bet not never call no what she said. Eric bet not never call no more. If he didn't take that read as a clue, and this shall be a sign unto you, you shall find yourself by yourself. Yeah, Judy Lee, I agree. She gonna need some vodka or something in that lemonade because she got problems. These people are getting on her last good nerve. Last good nerve. Reese Young though, facts, facts. I ain't even go. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna just let that. I'm gonna let that be there. I appreciate you pointing out that truth. Kelly Ruff said that sis needs to just go on and unplug that phone. Also, absolute facts. And I think we can all tell that Sharon is tired. But what about, hold up, ain't nobody got nothing to say about the job calling? About the job calling? We can tell. Now, I don't know exactly what time period this was supposed to be, but I don't know. She ain't got no caller ID. She ain't got no caller ID on there, but I know if my job calling and I'm on vacation, that phone's ringing. That phone is just gonna stay ringing. I ain't answering it. I am not answering it. Mika says that one was good and messy. I hope y'all dug it because I dug it. I had a lot of fun with it. And Rye says that it definitely had Jay California Cooper vibes. Reese says that he loves Jay California. Well, listen, we do some reading of her, and you'll find that in some of our earlier episodes. This next story that we're going to pop up is super short. This one's so short, it almost doesn't make sense to have a banner for it, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. This story is called Mr. Mister insisted that Fanny stay on those long nights while his chalky wife lay dying under laced covers. And even though Fanny wetted those death blue lips with herb tea, she knew it was Mister who needed healing most. Tainted goodbye whispers as the sun crept in, bringing brand new. Most days, dread weighed her down so heavy she could barely move. She had threatened to quit once while his wife's eyes still sparkled green, but Mister had begged her to stay, begged her husband Jake to let her stay, said his wife couldn't make it without her, but she always knew it was he who couldn't make it. She always knew. And Jake labored alone in the fields, fields that would never be his own. His wrinkled dark hands too blessed with dawn to dusk sun robbed. His wrinkled dark hands, too blessed with dawn till dusk sun, rubbed across his dusty brow with only his thoughts for company. He wondered why his babies weren't brown. It went okay most days till Mister's wife started ailing real bad. Her blue lips quivered, refused herb tea, and Jake held stead by till the last baby came. Little Star wasn't even dark about the ears, had those funny looking eyes. But he loved her just the same as he did the 7 others. But she never seemed quite right to him, not like the others, bless her heart. And that next season, when Jake's mind got troubled, Fanny could see his mind turning in the field with each pull of the plow. Fanny was doing her washing and nearly scrubbed the blood out of her hands, pining over Jake's thinking. She wanted to comfort him in some way, but words wouldn't come, and the time for hugs had passed between them. And when Mister disappeared the same night he laid his chalky wife down to rest, Jake just sat on the back porch in a big wooden rocker and no longer went to the fields. He just smiled a quiet smile at Little Star and sipped on a cool cup of well water as she played make believe in the dust and sun, turning black as the ace of spades. And thus endeth the story. Well, that was tragic. That was tragic and beautiful. And again, I think this gives me strong J. California Cooper vibes. That tragic and beautiful, those messy stories that are not told in the lines, but are told in between the lines. Um, Feels a lot like J. California Cooper. I am really loving the range that we're finding in this author so far. This is admittedly my first exposure to Crystal E. Wilkinson. And if it's your first, I promise I can speak. I promise I have diction and elocution. I say words real good. I'm just not doing it tonight. And you would think that I had a little vodka in my lemonade, but I didn't. It was just lemonade. It was simply lemonade, which is my favorite. Let's try this again. Gwen, it's okay that you missed this story. Let me go ahead and pop that on the screen because it's making me smile. It's okay that you missed the story, Gwen. As always, these stories are archived for 1 week on Facebook, and you can find all of them archived live on our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I wish you would take a moment right now and do that. You can see the information scrolling down at the bottom of your page. I will legit wait while you take a minute to do that. And instead, I'm going to go by and Angel said, read it again. Angel, I appreciate that, but no, I have an agenda to keep. We've got 2 more stories to go. Should the time allow, I'll go back and reread that one since it is entirely short. Since it's so succinct, I'll go back and read it should we have time. But sincerely, look at that information on the bottom of your page. I'd love it if you did everything that the scroll says. I would love it if you tipped your griot and went to Cash App and hit up Storytime Julian. Every bit helps and blesses. We just spent the last that was in the coffers to make sure that we were able to get the form out for this book drive. Every dollar that is donated to Storytime with Julian goes into making Storytime with Julian happen. So first, I would love it if you tipped your griot because it helps make this show happen. Second, would absolutely love it if you followed us on Instagram and Twitter. You'll find us at Storytime Julian. And man, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and just went through and watched some of the old videos and liked them and left some comments, that would be incredible. Those things would make my day. So Gwen, you can go back into that platform and you'll get an opportunity to check it out. And y'all are over here like sincerely having real life conversations about Simply Lemonade and their various flavors. And I'm not even really mad about it. I'm not. But for me, it's just the pure straight up lemon. I don't need all that extra. I have yet to taste any of the added flavors that do anything to make it better. It's either the Simply Lemonade by its Dammy. I might mix it with something. On occasion, I mixed it with a little something, you know what I'm saying? Or it's the Simply Limeade, which is chef's kiss. Chef's kiss, for real, for real. Make cherry lime Rickies at home. Cherry lime Ronnie, Bobby's, and Mike's at home. All right, we are going to read, because we still got quite a bit of time left in the show. We're going to read this next story. Again, we are coming out of Crystal Wilkinson's Blackberries, Blackberries. And so far, so good, right? I mean, whenever we debut a new author, it's kind of like, okay, let's see what we're getting into. This is my first, as I said before, my first exposure. If it's your first exposure too, let me know in the comments. I'd like to know for how many people this is your first time hearing from this author. And of course, if you like this author, she has other works, and we're going to make a point to make a follow-up post so that you'll be able to find some of the other works and make sure you know where you can find this one so that you can read some of the other stories in this collection. The good news is we have one more Crystal Wilkinson collection over on the shelf, so we'll dig into some of this a little bit more. But right now, let's read mine. Joe Scruggs stood firm on the notion that black women do not get their breast worked on. A white woman, maybe, but not a sister. And Moron? Now, that's something even he would give the green light to. Hold up. I didn't say and moron. Let's go. I'm gonna start this whole story over because I don't like the way I did it. Let me start it over. Mine. Joe Scruggs stood firm on the notion that black women do not get their breast worked on. A white woman, maybe, but not a sister. Add moron? Now that's something even he would give the green light to. But definitely, under no circumstances does a sister ever take away what God has blessed her with. But there Racine was, right in front of him, crossing the street at the corner of Main and Broadway, heading into Disha's restaurant wearing a loose, flowing, bright purple dress. She had already cut off her long, straight hair, started wearing it nappy, natural. She knew he liked it long, but she cut it anyway. Next thing he knew, she had left him and married a brother from Philadelphia, some kind of professor up at the university. But to go and get her 44 triple D's whittled down was going too far. She must have really lost her natural mind. He heard about it, people talk. He always kept informed about his exes through the grapevine. The moment he spotted her, he knew the word on the street was true fact. The grape fabric of her blouse was flowing where the fullness of 44 triple D's used to jiggle. His eyes followed his used to be across the street and watched her go inside. He could still see her through the window just behind the large white "esh" in dishes spelled out on the glass. She still stood out, the only black woman in sight, wearing deep purple, a bright orange head wrap around her head, her kinky hair peering out around the edges. He didn't like his women in loud colors, brought on too much attention. Racine disappeared into the crowd. He wondered what her husband must think. A sister getting whittled on. Shit. The light changed to green. Joe could hear the faint roar of traffic moving, but he was stuck on Broadway. Couldn't seem to make the right-hand turn that would take him to Darlene's house, where he would spend another Saturday night. He sat at the light thinking about following Racine inside, wondering if the sight of him would cause a commotion. Wondered if somewhere deep down some tiny part of her still wanted him. And this husband who allowed shit like this to happen, what kind of man is he? Darlene was chattering away in the passenger seat. What are we going to do this weekend, Joe Scruggs? What movie you want to see? What about dinner? I got me a taste for some red beans and rice. She called his name louder when he didn't answer. Joe Scruggs, you listening? How about some beans and rice? Huh? My mama's recipe. Tomatoes in it, a touch of jalapeno. Joe was somewhere between the sway of Racine's hips twisting into Disha's and missing the triple D's he had grown so fond of. I'll cook some cornbread, too. He had spent many nights cuddled up with them. Racine became secondary at times. Or do you want rolls? Mama always fixed cornbread with rolls sound good. And now she had the nerve to get them cut on. Cutting up his finery like that. Maybe it was all for spite. Cornbread or rolls? Darlene shook his arm at the same time a horn honked. In the rearview mirror, Joe could see the white man in the truck, his face all red and screwed up tight, his arms flying up in short, quick bursts, his mouth moving, pounding a fat white fist on the steering wheel. The light changed from green back to red, and Joe was still sitting in traffic, the brakes on his hatchback still pushed to the floor, a symphony of horns blowing behind him. Joe Scruggs! Darlene always called him by his whole name. Joe Scruggs! You daydreaming again? 2 years now, but she still called him like that. Joe Scruggs! Using his whole name, drawing it out too long, got on Joe's nerves sometime. Much of what Darlene did got on his nerves, at least sometime. There was something to be said about the chase, but after that, tedium had set in. He really didn't want his woman up under him all the time. Joe had met Darlene at the drugstore where she worked part-time after her day job. He had found her bent over in the cosmetics department, retrieving makeup from a box, stocking the little steel poles on the shelves with packages of mascara and face powder. He had stood and watched the spread of her slacks across her backside as she bent over, her braided extensions looking like long, thin tree limbs blowing between the space between her legs. He made his way down aisle 5 so he could get a glimpse of her face, grabbed some shaving cream off the shelf. Excuse me, could you help me out here? Darlene uprighted herself, throwing the extensions back like a white woman. Joe gave her the once-over. Not too much makeup. Cute in her own way. Nice breasts. Nice wide hips. Then he followed with a long story about him needing hypoallergenic shaving cream. By the end of the 30-minute conversation, Joe left the store with the few items he came in to get and Darlene's phone number and address neatly folded in his shirt pocket. He winked at her on the way out the door. Joe Scruggs, right? In the beginning, she had been hard, damn near impossible to get. It took great skill for Joe to juggle Racine and chase Darlene at the same time. At first, all he ever got was Darlene's answering machine. Then, somewhere between their first dinner date and Racine catching them embraced in a slow drag on the American Legion dance floor, Darlene became predictable. He heard his phone ringing every day after work. Before he reached the top step of his apartment building and turned the key at 7:29, the incessant ringing began. A pause, then ringing again. Hey, hun, just got in the door. Can I call you back? No need to inquire who was calling, he knew. Joe Scruggs, how was your day? Always the same. Phone calls every night at the same time. An occasional midweek meeting for dinner or lunch or sex. Weekends, Darlene's apartment, movie, dinner, sex. Always the same. But figuring out Racine was a real challenge. How could she do this? Had to be spite. He glanced over at Darlene, who was sitting quietly now, tired of being ignored, mad, looking out the car window, her arms crossed, her lips curled tight. Sorry, Suge, what did you say? Silence. Main Street turned into Leestown Road. Joe pulled his hatchback off onto the side street that led to Darlene's apartment. 2 bedrooms, deluxe cable, plenty of room to spread out, even a pool for the summer. Her cooking wasn't bad either. Joe used his own key to open the door, fanned his arm out like he was making an introduction of royalty, motioned for Darlene to enter first. She had to laugh. He chipped the edge off her anger. Inside the entrance, Joe grabbed Darlene, pulled her close, pinned her against the backside of the closed door. There was no resistance, no remaining sign of her being mad. He kissed her. Up against her, he could feel the bigness of her chest. See, black women do not get their breasts worked on. He closed his eyes tight. But there she was again, Racine, in her grape outfit, smiling, laughing at him, floating across his brain. Her breast whittled down from the size of cantaloupes to grapefruit, just for spite. He kissed Darlene hard and long, until Racine, floating, spinning in all that purple, disappeared. Later that night, there would be no leaving the apartment for the usual Saturday night moving. After the red beans and rice, the late show on Channel 7, Joe whisked Darlene off to the bedroom. He fumbled in the dark like a nervous teenager for the clasp on the back of her bra, sighed at the freed weight of her breast, cupped them in his hands. Mine. And thus endeth the story. So yeah, that was mine. I am waiting for all the comments because I know that Joe is not going to get away with all that shit that he said and the way that he acted without, I'm looking at Reese Young saying here he hasn't heard slow drag in years. I'm waiting for the slow drag that Joe's about to get. So I'm gonna give it 5-10 good seconds for y'all to go ahead and get your energy up because I know ain't no good way in hell y'all are gonna let that man get away with being who he was. Um I'm not gonna say nothing about him. I'm gonna say I really, really liked the sound of Racine's outfit. That grape dress with the orange cap. That just made me want all the crush. I wanted the grape crush and the orange crush. You can take that however you want, but I meant it to have innuendo. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Let me know what y'all thought about the story. I see that Gwen Sununu said, "Oh, just as it was getting juicy." Yeah, that one did end a little abruptly. I was expecting Joe Scruggs to get some kind of comeuppance. Tauntaun says that Joe needs to mind his own business. I completely agree. Unfortunately for Joe Scruggs, he really seems to believe that Racine is his and his business. I do like the title of the story, though. Not because I necessarily agree with it, but um, I don't know. So there are different camps on it. Me personally, I like the feeling of belonging. I like the feeling like when you willingly, openly give yourself to a person and they take pride in your having given yourself to them. I like belonging. I like the word mine for that reason. When you've given. Now, when you have not given yourself to a person and they assume that, then it has a much, much uglier tone that I can't get with. I can't get with. Kamisha says, say word. Joe needs to mind his own business. Angel says, all of it. Uh, Joe Scruggs was all kinds of dirt, Latricia says. And Kelly Ruff says he apparently picked up some audacity. That tickled me. He picked up some audacity on his way home from the pharmacy that day. I like it. I like it. That tickled me. He was a hilariously realistic character in Gwen's opinion. Yeah, definitely. Reese says we never get their bra thing right. Just go ahead and take it off so I don't have to look like an amateur. Sir, listen, I'm gonna need you not to. We're going to open up a subgroup for anybody who has bra strap issues. We're going to go ahead and get that solved and settled. I'm going to need you not to put that in public in writing. But that tickled me. That's hilarious. Joe need to set his ass down somewhere. Agreed on all points. We are at the last story of the evening, and it is just about, it's close to 11 o'clock. It is 10:53. So we should, based on the length of this story, we should be able to finish up right on time. I have enjoyed so far this journey through the works, through the early works of Crystal E. Wilkinson. I hope you have too. I'm going to be looking to post a link soon, so that I'm hoping that the admin team has a link for us in the event that you want to pick up a copy of this book. And I got a feeling some of y'all are going to want to. This feels like one of those good, comfortable reads when you just kind of need a little quick something. You got 10 or 15 minutes to steal in between some things. You can just pick this up and pull a story out of it and have a moment. So I would definitely encourage, if you're enjoying this, make a point to try and find it. We're going to try and provide a link for you. The final, what I believe is going to be the final story for tonight, is called Women's Secrets. I will admit this one, there is possibility that this one has, matter of fact, you know what? I think we're going to skip Women's Secrets because I think this one, if I'm not mistaken, this one might have the possibility of some delicate subject matter. And I'm not sure, but I think the one that we're going to do is tipping the scales. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to adjust this banner right quick. Buckle. Boom. There we go. So yeah, we're going to move into tipping the scales. And then if we do a second night of Crystal E. Wilkinson, which we might, I'll have somebody go over and see if we're good with that other story. Josephine Childs was a big woman. She stood up around 5'11" and weighed around 250 pounds. She wasn't sloppy fat though, just big, solid. Anybody who thinks big women can't get no man just needs to sit down and chat with Josephine. She sure had her hands full in the men department most all of her life. Josephine came into this world on the edge of a storm, and them rain clouds followed her around for years. And all Josephine's children was brought in the world pretty much under the same circumstances that she was born into. Miss Ethel Childs, Josephine's mama, was sneaking around with Edgar Walls, a mortician that traveled handling the black folks' dead kin in about 3 or 4 little towns clumped together, when she came up with a bun in the oven that turned out to be Josephine. Edgar was already married and had 3 full-grown children back over in the town called Middlesburg when Miss Ethel gave him the news. He built Miss Ethel a house right outside of Stanford where she lived for her just to raise Josephine, and as long as she never said a word about him being the daddy. Now, in them times, having a baby out of wedlock carried more seriousness than it does today. The whole town about tipped over with everybody traveling to the edge of it to see what Ethel Childs was a-doing. A lot of folks went to their grave worrying and fretting because they couldn't crack into Miss Ethel's business. Of course, Edgar snuck in and out of that house for years, seeing Miss Ethel and Josephine on up until he died without a soul knowing it. Even said he loved them, but just never had the withal to leave his wife. Miss Ethel died when Josephine was 25, and she set up a housekeeping just like her mama. Josephine started having babies to have something for herself. Her mama always belonged to her daddy, and her daddy was somebody else's husband and somebody else's daddy most of the time, which didn't leave much for her. Now, as far as she was, mm-mm. Now, as far as why she was hell bent on having men that always belonged to somebody else, I guess that's all she had ever known, or maybe it's all she thought she deserved. Her first child, Clifford, was by a man down in Calvary who was engaged to be married. His name was Cleavon, I think. Well, don't matter too much what his name is now. He met Josephine down at the Brown Diner. That's where she worked all these years as a waitress, from 6 in the morning to 2 in the evening, most every weekday. Cleavon, or whatever his name was in town with the state people building the new highway. He and the rest of the highway makers came into the Brown about every day for lunch for a month. Josephine was eyeing him, so he started eyeing her back. They made waitress to customer conversation, you know, the kind all waitresses make just to make sure they get a tip. So Josephine already knew most of that man's business. She knew he was from up Calvary, knew he was engaged and how much he loved his wife to be. But she just kept on making eyes at him. And then toward the end of the month, when they was getting ready to finish off the highway, she wore a real low-cut dress to the Brown. Not exactly the kind of outfit that a woman should be waitressing in, but Josephine knew what she was doing. When she practically laid her big double D breast out on the man's plate, it was more than he could handle, wife to be and all. So Josephine scribbled her address on a napkin, and Cleavon made his way to the edge of town for a visit. Now, I'm sure it sounds strange to you, but Josephine was 25, and her mama had just died, and she hadn't never had no man. She tried to tell Cleavon that when he mounted himself on top of her, slurping, hungry for them big double D's he had seen a peek of. But he had left all his tenderness back in Calvary with his wife to be and walled all over her real rough like. I guess like a man who's told a woman he's engaged to be married and keeps on after him anyway. Josephine cried at the pain in her body and the pain in her heart. Cleavon went on out the door, packed his bags, and left even before the highway was made. He had made enough in Stanford, I guess. All that wallering mean style he had made Clifford. When Josephine got her belly full, the town about tipped over again with all the folks bending their ear toward her door to find out her business. Didn't nobody know nothing but the highway makers, and by the time Clifford was about to come, they was all long gone. Word through the town was that she was her mama made over. The Browns what owned the diner didn't fire her, though. They knowed she needed the money with a brand new baby. Josephine kept on waitress until she couldn't stand no more, had the baby, and came on back to work in 4 or 5 weeks just as soon as she got her baby with a sitter. Josephine's milk barely had time to dry before she was back at it again. Same story. She hooked herself up with some businessman in a suit that grounded himself for a week on the way to Tennessee. Couldn't even tell you his name because I couldn't pronounce it when he was here. He sure was a good looking something, though. A flashy man, glittering and flittering around like gold, rings on most of his fingers, always running his hands through his slick backed hair. Didn't look like no black man we'd ever saw, though he claimed he was. By Wednesday of the week he stayed, he had moved on in with Josephine. He was a gentle lover, and although he didn't have no love in his heart for the woman, he didn't want to leave no woman he had breezed through on this earth to ever say he didn't do nothing for him. To him, love making was an art. Josephine's body was a canvas, and he was the brush painting her up one side and down the other till she fell off to sleep. Now, why Josephine got all teary eyed when he left, I don't know, because she knew he was just passing through on his way from here to there, but she shed tears anyway. He took her into town on Saturday night, draped her across his arm. They danced to the jukebox in the Brown in front of everybody. He kissed her full on the lips, and all the women in the restaurant sucked in air. He took her home, painted his most breathtaking picture, and come morning he was a breeze in the wind. That breeze left behind Goldine 9 months later. A beautiful girl child indeed. Don't get me wrong now. Mixed around among all the cavorting, Josephine was a good mama. She always had them babies shining, took them to church even with all the stares, and hurried home to them every night after she got off at the Brown. After the ones I can't pronounce, Josephine settled down a bit. Men would shoot her feisty looks, and she wouldn't take them up, and all kinds of men came through the Brown traveling down the new highway, but she didn't give none of them the time of day. I guess it was just 2 or 3 years till she got up with Jewel Barker and started shaking his tree behind a closed door. Jewel Barker was a married man, and to make things worse, he lived right in Stanford. Josephine saw him and his wife Maylene every Sunday in church. She eyed them often, not because she was after Jewel, but because she was envious of the love they seemed to share. He always had his hand at his wife's waist, or he would notice Maylene pat his knee. But all that changed when Josephine's washer went out. Mrs. Brown down at the diner told her to call Jewel Barker because he owned a fix-it business and could fix almost anything. And I guess he could. He went up to Josephine's house 3 times with 4 different parts for that washer, and by the 4th time, he had fixed it all, including Josephine. At first, Josephine wasn't paying Jewel no mind. She hummed herself through her evening chores, cooking supper, reading a bedtime story, and putting the kids to bed. Every night after she put the kids to bed was her time. She let her hair fall down round her shoulders and put a long purple housecoat that came down to the floor. That first night, Jewel had seen her in the doorway, her hair all down, hitting against that purple. He was hooked. It took her just a little longer to get hooked on him. In fact, she thought the Jewel wasn't much a man to look at. He was a lot shorter than her, a small man, and talked real quiet and stuffy-nosed like. The only thing she saw in him was his gentleness with his wife. Josephine, I'm sorry to bother you again, but I'm going to have to come back tomorrow evening with another part, he said, his voice a whining and a wheezing. And that was the 3rd day. Seems like I ain't never going to get to wash up these clothes. Now, is this thing going to work or not, Jewel? I'm not going to have to get another one. How much is this costing me? She snapped back, her hands on her hips. Don't worry, Josephine, he said back. I promise you I won't charge you any more for the labor, just the parts. After he got her mind at ease about the finance of it all, he got to working on her steady. All of us church was real sorry to see Miss Ethel go a few years back. Josephine knew he was lying because nobody in town liked her mama, but just that he was trying softened her heart a little. Yeah, I still miss mama like it was yesterday. Have some coffee, Jewel? They sat a while at the kitchen table, her getting a chance that she didn't get too often to talk about the goodness of her mama, him soaking in all the joy that she had in her and she don't show to nobody. They talked way up till morning. Jewel rubbed his hand across her face and left. He told Maylene that he got an emergency call over in the next county and had been up all night fixing a furnace trying to keep somebody's youngins from freezing to death. The next time Jewel came through Josephine's door, the spare part sat atop the washer and they talked some more. He even played with Clifford and Goldine before they was put down to bed. After the kids was asleep, Jewel worked his way from the side of the couch down to Josephine's. Before she knew it, like men do, he ran his hand through her hair and around the back of her neck and pulled her down to him. She didn't even attempt to resist. He kissed her long and slow, a soft kiss, till they was both in the way the world till they was both in the world they had made. He kissed her neck and put his arms around her as far as they could reach. Jewel, don't you need to be heading on home? Formed in her brain to say, but the words got lost in the kindness of Jewel Barker's eyes. She tried to think about all them things she knew to be true. He's married, he's short and little. His voice always sounds like he's full of cold. But before too long, she had grabbed Jewel by the hand and led him down the hall to her bedroom. When they laid long ways so the right parts was meeting, Jewel's head rested right at Josephine's breast and his feet hit somewhere up round her shins. But none of that mattered. Jewel kissed her breast like they were her lips, and Josephine moved Jewel on around up top of her where she wanted him to go. It felt nicer to her to be in charge of a man, even under these circumstances. Jewel kept lying to his wife, coming by Josephine's fixing things 2 or 3 times a week. Josephine a throwing him all over that bed, and they both just getting what they needed out of it. I guess it took 2 or 3 months before Josephine's monthly stopped again. Jewel quit coming by in the late months, but started back up after Steve Edward was born. Things wasn't the same at first, but soon they fell into a pattern. Jewel came by on Mondays and Wednesdays and dropped off a little money and stayed a little while, just long enough for the kids to get to sleep and let Josephine throw them around on the bed if she wanted to. Josephine was still working at the Brown, but the Browns, like everybody else in town, was starting to look at her even more funny. They let her stay, though, because she needed the money. 3 kids now by 3 different daddies, 2 of them a mystery, and a third by the breeze of the wind that had a name couldn't nobody pronounce. Things was getting kind of rough for Josephine with 4 mouths to feed now, including her own. The money that Jewel was dropping off and her wages at the Brown together wasn't enough to keep up with the bills. Of course, her house was paid off. Her daddy took care of that, but there was still the lights, water, gas, and not counting the phone, groceries, and her climbing daycare bill. So when George Elvis started sniffing around the Brown after her, flashing wads of money he had done won shooting craps, it wasn't hard deciding what to do. Josephine took up with George Elvis quick. He was tall, taller than her, stood about 6'4", slim, light skinned man, bits of gray sprinkled all through his hair, even though he was around the same age as her. George was the kind of man that took up a whole room when he walked in it, no matter how big it was. And when he walked into Brown flashing money and set his sights on Josephine, he swept her on up with the rest of the room without anyone knowing but just them two. George Elvis was known in town as a ladies' man. He was all time juggling two, three women at a time, and Josephine knew it. But in no time, he was out at her house ringing her doorbell at midnight after his Friday night crap shooting. First time he came wasn't no games played. He walked straight on in her house like he owned it, laid $200 out on the table and a fan, and said to her with a matter of fact in his voice, "Here's some money for you and your babies like I promised. Now how about you showing some appreciation to old George Elvis?" He walked around Josephine like a cougar stalking deer meat and came up on her from behind, rubbing all he had up next to her. She could smell beer and cigarettes stale on his breath, but it was nice to have a take charge man again. And charge he took. Josephine was so used to Joelle's kind of loving that when George Elvis flipped her over across the bed, she was kind of shook up at first, till he felt his tongue moving, beer, cigarettes, and all round in her mouth. George Elvis made love to her strong and good and would never stop for nothing till she said his name. Mondays and Wednesdays still belonged to Jewel, and Fridays was George Elvis's. They all three had an agreement. George Elvis agreed to do whatever the hell he wanted and come see her on Friday nights after his crap shoot. She kept her Fridays clear and he kept the money coming in. He didn't even know that Jewel Barker was the other man and really didn't care. He had more women than enough. And Jewel Barker agreed that as long as he dropped by twice a week or so and let Josephine throw him around on the bed the way she had when they was making their third child, then he didn't have to worry about his wife, Maylene, finding out or make no real child support payments. Josephine just agreed to do whatever it took to keep both her men happy and be able to feed her children, pay her bills, and grab a piece of happiness for herself now and then. The problem with all this was that Josephine's pieces of happiness was getting smaller and smaller all the time. Her kids was getting older, and she wanted to give them something besides a Monday, Wednesday daddy, and she wanted more than a Monday, Wednesday, Friday man. She would see Jewel and Maylene in church every Sunday and long for what they had. Of course, he played Maylene like a fiddle, but she wasn't talking about that part. Jewel didn't hold her at the waist like he did Maylene. Not that she wanted Jewel to be the one doing the holding, it's that she wanted somebody to really love her all out in the open like that. Most time now, when Jewel made his trip over, Josephine would just sit and stare at the floor. Jewel would motion his head toward the bedroom, and she would shake her head no, and he would go on home to Maylene. And George Elvis was one of them men that didn't see love in no woman, just saw a contest, saw making love kind of like setting a record. He worked and sweated and poked, kissed, prodded, rubbed, whatever he had to do to please a woman, and when he got done and she called out his name, he was ready to go find the next one. Josephine got to the point where she got to moaning and groaning on George Elvis as soon as he got started, just to get him out the door quick. She went to spending more time with her kids. She let them stay up later because there wasn't no need in rushing them off to bed. Sometimes they was up all playing when George Elvis would come over on Friday nights. He would leave, and Josephine was glad that he did. Only thing that bothered her was the money part, and she figured she'd find a way. Jules started coming by on just Mondays when he came. He came early and spent the most of his time playing with the kids, especially Steve Edward. Josephine started working overtime at the Brown on weekends just to try to make ends. And I guess it was a good thing because if she didn't, she never would have met Ash Yerby. Ash Yerby was a broad chested, stout, long, brown skinned man with a voice so deep a body could fall right into it. He worked for the sewing factory and he got transferred from way down in Alabama to the Stanford plant. He came by bus one Saturday and stopped at the Brown for a bite of breakfast. Josephine served Ash without a notice, filling his coffee cup and giving him some more eggs and gathering her tip when he left. Ash returned for lunch and sat at the same table. He asked Josephine directions to an apartment he'd called about. Words danced out his mouth like thunder, and Josephine didn't even notice. She scribbled directions on a wet napkin and kept going. Ash Yerby, I'm moving here to y'all's town, he says, extending his hand out toward Josephine. I'm new to around here, new to Kentucky. Josephine Childs, welcome to Stanford, welcome to Kentucky. Want to hear the specials? She said, shifting from one of her hips to the other, trying to get some relief down to her feet. She ignored his outstretched hand. Okay, let's hear him, Ash said, trying to smile through Josephine's sadness. Your choice: fried chicken or deep fried shrimp with coleslaw, french fries, cornbread, dessert, and drink of $4.99. Josephine said like a menu machine. No smile, no nothing. Ash ordered the special and watched Josephine work. He moved in his new apartment, so he got to cooking for himself and didn't go to the Brown no more. But most every weekend, he could see Josephine coming and going to work right past his window. He never seen a big woman move so smooth, like she floated by his window and he wanted to know more about her. But he tried to put her out his mind. She was so dry, hateful almost, and he came here for a job, not no woman. All the women round town, single and married, was buzzing about this new man from Alabama that done moved to Stanford. All kind of women got to strutting back and forth down up the street right up Ash's window, but he didn't pay them much mind. Josephine didn't pay them much mind either. She was too tired from working overtime at the Brown, or just too tired, period, to put another man in her mind. The next time Ash laid eyes on Josephine, it was at church. Josephine came in with her children, each of them in a straight line, following behind their mama like they had proper home training. They were all a sight to see. Josephine settled herself and her young'uns in the pew. She looked straight ahead toward the pulpit when Jewel and Maylene walked in. It wasn't until the deacon called on visitors did Josephine really hear Ash's voice for the first time. She was rested and peaceful in church with her ears wide open. Ash stood up in the back of the church when visitors was called on, and all the women in the church turned to look. Ash's voice moved across the church like a note in a jazz song. Just glad to be a member of this community and to be in the house of the Lord with you all here today. Thank you for having me. That's all he said, but a feeling went out over the women in the crowd like ain't nobody never seen. Josephine heard him loud and clear. After church, every woman alive was gathered around Ash Yerby, offering to bring him casseroles, cakes, and cobblers, offering to help him with whatever he needed. And I'm sure each of them was as serious as cancer about what they were saying. Ash searched the crowd for Josephine, but looked out and saw her and her children walking hand in hand away from him. Miss Josephine, he hollered, breaking away from the mob of the churchwomen. Miss Josephine, wait. His voice, cool as water, bounced off Josephine's ears like springtime. She turned round and saw the whole women's congregation behind Ash with their hands on their hips. I just wanted to compliment you on the sight that you and your children are. They are the most well-behaved children to be so little I think I've ever seen. And you're quite a vision, too. Thank you, Mr. Yerby, Josephine said and kept on stepping, relishing the fact that he remembered her name. Ash headed in the other direction, relishing the same feeling. Ash started hanging out at the Brown regular when Josephine was working. He'd sit at the counter and talk to her for hours between customers. He'd talk till his throat was dry and she'd bring him some iced tea or lemonade over, and they'd talk some more. Jewel and George Elvis both noticed, but couldn't neither one of them say a word. All them women in need of a man took notice too. Wasn't too long till Ash was picking up Josephine and the kids for long drives out in the country and taking her to work and walking her to work, depending on the weather. 2 or 3 months went by before Josephine really invited Ash to her house. He came over for dinner, ate with her and the kids, helped put them all down for bed, and went home. One night, before things got too far down the road, Josephine sat Ash down and told him about her whole life. Told him about her mama and daddy, all her baby's daddies, including Jewel Barker, Jewel's visits to see Steve Edward, George Elvis, and everything else there was to tell. She expected to see his backside headed out the door after that long story, but he pulled her close to him. Josephine opened her mouth for a kiss because she knew he wanted to get some of her after hearing about what everybody else done got, but he just pulled her close and held her tight. Damn, woman. You been dragged down the river and back again, ain't you? Well, long as I'm living, you won't go that way no more, was all he said. Josephine let loose about 10 years of tears on Ash that night. He held her and wiped her face and whispered cool words in her ear like a mama comforting a sick child. When she fell off to sleep, he stretched her out on the couch and covered her up. When Josephine woke up with panic in her eyes, Ash had already got the kids dressed, gave them some breakfast, and had her waitress in uniform pressed and ready. On Monday nights, Ash greeted Jewel Barker at the door, invited him in, and told him that Steve Edward was waiting on him in the kitchen. Jewel was in some kind of shock, but he visited with his son and left without a word to Josephine except hello. Guess 6 months had passed before Ash really took Josephine in his arms. But when he did, they both was more than ready. He kissed her in tiny soft kisses, and long hard kisses, stopping to ask if she liked this or that. She did the same for him. They explored each other, stopping to check if each other was all right. He made love to Josephine like a man in love, and that was something she had never had. They laid in a heap high as love would stack up when morning creeped in. Ash had nowhere and nobody to run off to, and they made love all over again before the kids got up. Ash and Josephine began to go everywhere together. They went to church, the grocery store, and to each other's work, always with his hand at her waist. They sat in church and she patted him lovingly on the knee or held his hand. Every woman in all of Stanford went wild. It just didn't make no sense to them at all. So they would corner Ash when he was by himself and try to tell him some of Josephine's business, what little they knew. But he always knew about what they was telling him and more, so he'd shut them up real quick. Come the next spring, Ash and Josephine got married at the church. The whole town turned out for the wedding just to see if it was true. Some fine, hard-working man all out in the open with Josephine Childs and marrying her to boot? Josephine was a vision sure enough, with her hair all down round her shoulders, joy pouring out her face, and a great long lavender dress touching the floor. She had both Jewel Barker and George Elvis wanting to reach out to her because they was remembering old times, but they couldn't. And Ash all dressed in white, a smile across his face a mile long, his voice booming out vows to love Josephine forever. All three of her kids stood up with her, a sight to see, and the whole town about tipped over with everybody traveling to the edge, bending their ears to the door. And thus endeth the story. So that one was tipping the scales, and I am really, really glad that I made that audible and switched the story. Let's go back and check some of the comments. We are at time, and I expect that some of y'all are probably going to drop off soon. It's about 11:20. We usually try to finish up about 11:15. I think I ran long with some of the jaw jacking earlier, so I'll try and be a little bit more mindful of that. But let's pull some of these lines and see what was speaking to you. Um, there was a lot. First things first, you can find this wonderful book, Crystal E. Wilkinson's Blackberries at Harriet's Bookshop. You know the link. If you've been here with us before, you know the link. So there it is. HTTP. You know what? I ain't even got to call it out. For those of you who are on Facebook, you can go ahead in the comments and click the link. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube, just go to bookshop.org and look for Harriet's Bookshop, and you'll be able to find the title of the book, Blackberries. So this joint right here, the whole town about tipped over. That repeating line gave such rhythm and such cohesion to this piece overall. I was really, really taken with it. I love how this story really how this story really shaped up. Reese Young saying Papa was a Rolling Stone. Yeah, so we're talking about the first daddy in this story, Josephine's daddy. And that becomes a running theme throughout. Slurping. Yeah. Yeah, stood out to me too. You're not the only one that's childish. Stood out to me too. Yeah, there was a little bit of scandal. Kenny Foxy is pointing that out. Said he could fix anything, and I guess he could. That was another one, a really beautiful way. I'm loving the way that Crystal Wilkinson describes the sex act sort of throughout. She has so many beautifully euphemistic ways of making her point that it doesn't sound lecherous. It sounds poetic, but you still get the sense of intensity and raw sexuality. They laid down long ways so that their parts matched. And then the very, very visual imagery of Josephine throwing this man around the bed. When he came over to see if Josephine wanted to throw him around the bed like she used to, man, I got nothing. Reese Young has something to say. Let's see what he says here. This brings back memories of men having families on both sides of town, finding out that even though you've been raised as the oldest grandchild, you not, because the cheerleader across town that you're trying to date is really, yo, bro, listen. Say less. I got you. I know exactly what you mean. $200. Yeah. Just came in, plopped the 200 on the table and said, show me some appreciation. Um, that is some confidence. That is some confidence. Rubbing all he had. Now, see, I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know if he was like, I'm rubbing all he had, or just rubbing all he had. I didn't know which way to take that. I see how you took it, Mika, and you may well be right. Gave her that strong and good. Yeah. I like this line too. Kitty Foxy pulls this one out. A Monday, Wednesday, daddy. There's something really, really like I feel the moment of recognition that came to her when I read that. When I read that. Reese Young sounds like a story worth reading on Storytime with Julian. I'm just saying. Wait, what now? Oh, ha ha ha. Yeah, that may well be a story worth reading on Storytime with Julian. If it's written, we'll find it. Words danced out of his mouth like thunder. Man, listen. If somebody said that, that would be my epigraph. You understand me? If somebody ever said something like that about me, boom. That's going on. Well, there's not going to be a stone. I'm going to be cremated, but that's going on the building dedicated in my name. Wonder if this story was in Louisville, the Brown. No, this is not that the Brown. They said that this was in Stanford, but this author did indeed grow up in Kentucky. Yes, the imagery of Josephine coming in with all of her children, Josephine Childs and her 3 children, it did feel like a description of them, like little ducklings following behind her. It was cute. Like they had some proper home training. Shade of a church. Listen, right? Nobody can shade you the way church folk can shade you. They can find a way to compliment you in the name of Jesus and just really, really, yeah, yeah. Um, this story was definitely a good one to finish off on. Angel Monique says that it was a perfect finish. And I just want to go ahead and remind you all again, if you are interested in this book, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't be, you can find a copy of it here. Go find it at Harriet's Bookshop. If you have a local bookstore, a Black-owned bookstore in particular that you like to support, then go there. Go to their website or go there in person and support them. But let's continue to let our Black booksellers know that they are important, that they are part of the health and the well-being of our community. And we can best let them know that with our dollars. I see Reese has his story here. And I really kind of want to, you know what, let's see. Kamisha Umstead is commenting about the slow lovemaking between Ash and Josephine. And yeah, there was something really beautiful about that. Reese, I'm really glad that you're going to be back. I'm glad to see you come through. Let's check out this story real quick. If you told the story, we're going to read the story. Let's see. I was a football player on the rival team. She was a cheerleader for the other school. On the way to the game, I stopped at my grandmother's house to say hello. As I entered the kitchen, the girl I was pursuing was there. I asked her why she was at my grandmother's house. She said that she was visiting her grandmother. I didn't think anything of it because I assumed that her grandmother was visiting my granny, but my grandmother was the only person in the kitchen. My uncle read the room, and I'm guessing that's the end of it. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot. But thank you for sharing. Now, that's Reese's story, y'all. So I know it's a lot of writers that watch this show. So if y'all are thinking about doing an adaptation, y'all make sure you get Reese's permission. That's Reese's story to tell. Reese, I'm really glad that you came through. And for everybody who spent your first night with Storytime with Julian here tonight, thank you so much for coming. And thank you all for everyone who invites a friend to come along and share this time with you. That means the world to me. Thank you for supporting Storytime with Julian. And I hope that you extend that support to our book drive. Some of you may already know, and for those of you who don't know, I'm going to put the information here on the screen. We are in the middle of our first annual book drive. This is our spring book drive, and our goal is to get 100 black books in the hands of 100 Black kids. Now, if you'd like to make a donation to that book drive, you can do so right from your mobile device. You can go to Cash App and go to #HarrietBookDrive. Harriet's Bookshop. Our partners over at Harriet's are going to be handling all the transactions. They're going to gather the books together. They're going to ship them out. They're going to make sure that these kids get these books. Some shipments are already starting to go out because so many of you have been so generous that we want to go ahead and get the ball rolling. We still have about 20 to 30 slots available if you would like to register a child. And if you want to do that, go to the Storytime with Julian page on Facebook. You will find the link to the survey pinned there. And I'll make a point to, matter of fact, if one of our admin can go ahead and post that bit.ly link, we'll bring it up on the screen so that you can follow that bit.ly link. But please, please, ma'am, please, sir, do help us. Help us give the kids some of the same joy that you got tonight. It is wonderful and refreshing and powerful to hear Black stories, to hear stories that are written in your own voice, that resonate with you in a way that it's just the familiarity. There is something about our Blackness. There's something about that culture that while we are not a monolith, there are certain things that weave themselves seamlessly in and out of our shared experiences. And let's start letting our children see that and feel that and read that and get some of that same joy that we get. All right. So please, please, please support this book drive. And that's all I got to say about that. Now, before we bring things to a close, I do also want to ask, please continue to support Storytime with Julian. You can support Storytime with Julian by subscribing on YouTube. You can, oh wow, the sound. I think we're getting some breaking up here. I hope you guys can still hear me. You can support Storytime with Julian by subscribing on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can invite your friends. You can let people know in your own posts how much you enjoy Storytime with Julian. And it means a lot to me if you would do that. We're going to go ahead and bring the night to a close. We will be doing an after story. We're going to keep it kind of brief. I'm not going to be on for very long, but I'm sure we will have some robust conversation. Thank you again for coming out to Storytime with Julian. I'm going to play the closeout and the credits, and we will see you on Thursday. And everything froze. Okay. Let's try this one more time. I'm gonna play the closeout and the credits, and we'll see you on Thursday.